Hey everyone, Steven here, and welcome to episode number 10 of You Are Admirable. This is a very special episode because it's with my friend, Kyle Sorenson. Kyle and I have been friends since the first grade, probably having a lot to do with how admirable he has always been. The conversation that we had is probably the most formal we've had in a long time, and I'm really excited to share it with all of you. Let's jump into it. One of the things that I really admire about you, Kyle, is something I noticed since I met you in first grade, which is your talent as an artist. So it was obvious you were the best artist in our class for sure, and always kind of the best artist that I ever knew in my circle of people. Why was it that art was so important to you, and how is it that you were so good at art at a young age, since first grade?
Well, thanks. I think that I don't think it goes. I think like saying that art, like why was art so important to me, is almost like backwards when I think about it. It's almost just like I liked drawing, and the rest came from that. So I don't know. I think I always got a lot of joy out of sitting down and sketching things, and and especially with drawing, it's hard because it was like so early on. Like I've been doing it since I was like 4 years old. So I mean, it probably is significant that my parents draw, so they probably instilled some amount of interest in that early on. But I just like doing it. Yeah. So, and there's a lot of satisfaction, and you put a pencil to paper, and then like eventually it like looks like something. So that's really profound stuff from it. For you, it always looked like something awesome, and for a lot of the other kids who maybe like to draw, they just didn't have the talent that you did. Was there something early on, like a book that you read, or on how to draw, or what was it that? I mean, I bet it was, again, I think it was just my parents. I think it's a little bit like I assume if you have musician parents, you just get acquainted with instruments early, so you get a little bit of a leg up. I'm sure that my dad, I mean, I have no memories of it, but I'm sure he sat me down and like explained something about proportion or some way of how to, look at something so that you actually make it look realistic. I don't know. I wasn't in first grade. I wasn't that. I think I was better than the average first grader, but I wasn't like, I wasn't like Picasso, or that's a bad example. It wasn't like Da Vinci or someone who's actually like realistic. I remember it being pretty impressive, and especially the dragon drawing, which I know I brought up a lot. There was that dragon that you drew, and another student and I had almost a bidding war for who would buy it from you. And I know that I lost the bidding war, but I still got to buy a photocopy of that picture, which I may have. I may be able to link that up here. If you have it, I would like to see it, because I don't remember what it looked like anymore. It looked awesome, and it was awesome enough that I think I broke open my piggy bank literally with all of my coins and gave you, I want to say it was something like it was something ridiculous, like $1.68, which is all I had in my coins, and I bought the photocopy, colored photocopy, which I'm sure probably cost more than $1.68 at the time. Yeah. I'm sure, I doubt I paid for whatever the photocopy was either. That's true, yeah, your parents probably did it or something. Yeah. I do remember, this is like a bit of a tangent, but I think it was second grade. I do remember there was like our class got assigned to make a poster for Admirable. And I remember like it was supposed to be like promoting families or something like that, and I drew this like really kick-ass snowboarder with like some goggles and just like doing some trick, I don't know. And then I had like a tiny little family in like the mountain in the background. But it like looked really, it looked good. And I was like, yeah, I got this. And then the one that won was just like 4 stick figures. But it was like a family like holding hands and like at the time I remember it feeling like an injustice, and now I'm like, yeah, I can. They probably weren't. They were probably looking for stick figures when they had like.
Why is it that you went to school for film instead of art? I feel like art was always your thing. Why film then? It's funny how a lot of choices that you make, I think they kind of have a certain logic at the time, and then like after you do it, you realize like your rationale didn't make any sense. But so with film, I guess I was thinking like it seemed like the most pragmatic artistic profession. Like it was something where I could actually imagine people going to a day job, and you know, like when you think of like an artist, like a fine artist, that's you just don't. Some people make it, but very few people do. And I also was already into music pretty heavily by that point too. And I guess I was thinking like film is the place where maybe all the things meet. And I guess really probably the biggest reason is I didn't know what I wanted to do. So MSU had like a film program that was good, and it was. I mean, I didn't make the choice with a lot of conviction. It wasn't something that it's not the story of, you know, ever since I was 12, I always knew I wanted to be a filmmaker. It's more like I got to the end of high school and I'm like, I don't know what to do, so. So film is it? Yeah, and I mean, and I think all those things that I was thinking I would get out of film, I don't know if I got those things, but it was a good fit. I still ended up enjoying it a lot. And I guess I did watch a lot of movies in high school too, so. Mm-hmm. And musically speaking, you've been doing music forever. When I can remember buying CDs of your electronic music, which I still have those as well, back in probably elementary school, or was that high school?
The CDs weren't until high school, I don't think. Okay. My very first, you know, like sketches or whatever electronic things that I made were like 7th grade. But I don't think maybe I made a CD that early, I'm not sure. Huh. I don't know if I sold the first one. The first one might have just been I don't know if I got entrepreneurial until a little later. But
well, you've always seemed to have a really incredible grasp of things that work musically. The music that you made, the electronic music that you made in high school and middle school was good. It wasn't just like... It wasn't just like, oh, this is music that you would play video game or put in video games. It was pretty sophisticated music. How did you get to that point?
Well, I mean, I think the very first things I made, like I don't know if I've played you at some point you probably heard like the first few things I've made, but that stuff isn't so sophisticated. I think I think if you rewind all the way back to the beginning, it's not so impressive. You get there by doing it a gazillion times. And I think with me, it was just, I think a lot of what it was is I would hear music, and it often was on video games, that I just like wanted to copy it. So I don't know, after you do it like 50 times, you start to find things that you like, or, you know, you end up, you find your groove, I guess. And, but I had like a big progression from whatever those first things were in 7th grade to the end of high school. Because by the end of high school, I actually felt pretty good about like I mean, I sound like I'm bragging or something, but it was like, it was a satisfying experience going, like, that's one of the reasons I think I like making music, is it's like a trail of crumbs or something where you can like go back and you can see like like a snapshot of where you were musically at such and such a point, and be like, yeah, that's the moment when I discovered key changes, or I don't know, that kind of stuff. So
yeah. And now you've progressed to a point where you play a ton of different instruments, and you're making music that you're putting out a song every month through Patreon. What's that experience been like? It's been good. I really like it.
Well, so, because back in high school, I made all of these. I think it was 7 numbered CDs where so I was always producing stuff. Now I probably finished a song once every week or two back then. And then the first year of college, I was pretty prolific in music. And then after that, I went on about a 8 or 9 year span where I didn't actually like make any completed things. I learned guitar during that time, and I was always dabbling, and I was always like kind of composing melodies, but I hadn't made like a full thing for years. And I had kind of like drifted into doing more motion graphics, and you know, my creative energies had gone other places. And I think Patreon was the thing that kind of like brought me back to where I was in high school. And something that I think I didn't realize how much I was missing it until I started doing it again. Like, it's very rewarding and fulfilling to make something on a regular basis. Yeah, I mean, it just to always have some kind of project in the works that, you know, you want to finish or something.
Yeah. Well, I think that's something that I've always really admired about you along the lines of art and music and graphics as well, is it's time consuming. And there is some tedious stuff involved. And I've always admired that whatever you're doing, art, you know, way back in the day, music back in the day, music now, the work that you do, you're willing to sit there and really spend time on things, and you have a lot of patience with it. And I don't think that's something that I naturally have. It's something I've had to work on, and I don't think a lot of people naturally have it. Do you think that's come from somewhere? Can you know, trace back the beginning of just patience that you have for those sorts of projects?
Well, I think there is something to be said for just you're probably not going to do anything that you're not going to commit that amount of time to anything that you don't enjoy doing. So if something's going to take 40 hours, there has to be some extra spark that keeps you like interested in it. So I think when there's certainly parts of writing any piece of music that are tedious, but in general, I don't think I find it super tedious. I think I tend to be engaged, and I tend to find it relaxing and meditative. I mean, I think there's also part of it is practice and habituation. So, I mean, with this project that you're doing right now, I've already noticed, like, once you get some inertia going and once you get some momentum going with a project, it changes things when you have to produce something every week. You know, you get engaged with it in a different way, and I think it becomes easier. I think a lot of what makes creation difficult is just getting that like initial bit of energy to like push you over you got to get like that first thing finished, or first few things finished, and then once you've done it a few times, then it gets easier, and so that it's not as much of a problem, not as much of a difficulty.
Is there anything in particular that you have kind of relied upon to get over that first hump?
I think getting older has. I think I've learned like what the experiences of not having a project can be like, and like the kind of boredom or restless energy that I feel. And so I think there's a lot of I don't know what the term is. Is it negative incentives or something? Where where I think when I was younger, maybe I would work on things just because I wanted to work on them. And I think now there's even a little bit more of the like, I know if I don't do this, I'm gonna have a day where I am feeling useless or something like that. And so now I think just having an awareness of myself and how I will feel if I'm not working on a project tends to be a pretty big motivating factor for keeping me doing stuff.
What was your plan? Did you have a plan originally with your film degree, or did you go into it not really knowing?
I haven't really had a plan with almost anything I've done in my life. By the end of the film, by the end of when I got my film degree, I guess the plan became to go to Los Angeles, which is because that's just what people do when they get film degrees. That's where you get work. So I guess I had that next step in mind. I don't even know if I had that at the beginning of the film degree, or when I entered into the film program. So, but I'm not really somebody who's ever been very good at like thinking 10 years ahead or 2 years ahead. So I think in general, I guess I'm blessed that I tend to find something I like in whatever it is I'm doing. So I don't know if there's anything special about film. Like if I had gone into another major, I think probably I would have found something that I like about that. And I don't think there's anything like particularly about film that's just like I was made for doing it kind of thing.
Yeah, and that reminds me of a friend of mine, Tommy Greenfield, who worked a kind of shitty job. I think we all had kind of this shitty job, and he always just found the fun in it and found things to make it enjoyable for himself. And that really reminds me of that. I don't know if that's similar to what you're...
I think it's exactly that. I know that it's something that I can't really take credit for. I feel like it's just I'm usually able to find whatever it is in what I'm doing that I like, or at least within the scope of responsibilities of a job, there's usually something that I can kind of hone in on and enjoy. And I don't think everybody can do that, and I don't know why, but like I just know what I like. It's like that's my main thing, is I just have a strong sense of liking things. So
do you think that's something that has come naturally, or is it something that you became aware of at some point in time where you kind of needed to be aware of what you liked, or you were finding what you liked specifically?
I think it's come naturally. I think that's something where I just don't think I've ever had, I think I've always just had a pretty strong sense of how, just my response to things. I think what draws me to music is I hear something and I just know I like that, and then I want to make that. Or, I mean, that's just how it works with everything.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, nice. Back to LA. That was something that was big for me. And it was huge for you, I'm sure. Big for me in that I saw my friend, one of my best friends, you, do this thing where you're leaving our hometown for the big city, and you're leaving for an industry that's really not guaranteed. I mean, you didn't have a job when you went down there, right?
Yeah, it was totally cold.
Totally cold going to this new place in this difficult industry. To me, it was just like, I never really thought I would have had the courage to do that. And I'm curious as to what you were thinking at the time, how you thought about it, if you were scared, and how you went about that whole move.
The answer is pretty much the same as how I got into the film program, which is, I mean, I wasn't really scared, but I would chalk a lot of it up to naivety and not courage. So I guess I just had a basic belief that, because I had been working at PBS prior to that for about 4 years, so I had some professional experience. I figured I would be able to find a job and make friends. I had just kind of like a basic belief that it would work out. So I mean, it was weird to leave, and I think there was a little bit of nerves just kind of going to a completely new place, but it wasn't really. I wasn't so scared about finding a job for whatever reason. Mm-hmm. I think I would be now, though, actually. So now that I've done it, it's now one of those things in retrospect where I think, gosh, that's so much more crazy than you should research a job before you move a place. I don't think I'd do it again, which is, I mean, not like I regret doing it, but I think now, being 10 years older, I'm more cautious than maybe I was back then. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Of everything that you do, your art, your music, your film work, editing, what would you say is your favorite thing to do?
Of all of the things, I think probably music, and specifically the writing music. Not the lyrics, the melody part of it. Lyrics are more painful. But yeah, I think the most just immediately gratifying part of all the creative processes or whatever that I do are it like doing or how to say it, like making a melody. There's just a special satisfaction in like dinking around on a guitar or whatever and like finding a note and being like, oh, I like that, then go to the next one and like, oh, it's even better. And like there's a brief period of time when it's like forming and it's just really satisfying to be like, I like this thing. Yeah, when you get into the lyric writing, it's a slower process and more strained and difficult. But
What accomplishment would you say that you're most proud of?
well, so you've asked this because I've seen your other interviews. You've asked this before, and so I guess the question is this like a life accomplishment or like a project or either?
Both.
Or both? Okay.
Yeah, either, both, whatever you want to answer, however you want to answer it.
Yeah. Well, because I mean they're different, I think.
Okay, let's do both then.
Because I think if it's just talking about like what project am I most pleased with, it's just the Patreon stuff. I think that is more than any other thing I've done. It's been the most fulfilling because it's completely, I don't know, it's completely my own, and it's something where I've been able to make content or turn out content at a regular basis and turn it out at a quality that I'm pretty satisfied with. And I think with other things that maybe I think I do well, it's tended to be like in a work context where I'm making graphics for somebody else or I'm editing somebody else's thing, and so like I can have satisfaction knowing that like I did a good job or the craft of something was good, but the idea was given to me or the assignment was given to me, and what I like about Patreon is it's just whatever I want. So, and I think for a long time I didn't like what was missing in my own personal creation was having that kind of like formal place where like a place to just distribute it to the world, or having something that kind of like formalized it. So yeah, I like how Patreon gives me all of those elements. It keeps me making stuff, and I like what I'm making. I think I'm going around in circles now, but I'm seeing like I'm literally creating circles with my hands.
Nice.
And yeah, and I guess like life accomplishment wise, it probably wouldn't be related to creativity at all. I think I'm pleased with how I guess I've developed as a person since high school. In particular, I think the thing for me that maybe I pay most attention to is I don't have a history of really liking the spotlight. I don't really like performing, and it's something that even doing like an interview like this is something that historically would not be something that I would have like been attracted to. And in the last like 2 or 3 years, I've just gotten a lot more open, and I've done a lot more things that have, I guess, they feel like, well, I've done, music performances, and I've done a few performances of various types at the Verge, and those feel particularly significant to me because they're the kinds of things that, like, if old high school Kyle had seen modern day Kyle, he would have been like, I would never do that. So
yeah. Along those lines, I really like that you're always reading and learning, and you are extremely open, and you don't tend to take slam dunk sides. Has that always been the case with you, or was there kind of a turning point where you realized that there's just a lot of nuance to most every issue?
There was definitely a turning point. I think somewhere toward the beginning of college. I think when I was in high school, I had more concrete opinions about things, and I think going to college, I think prior to going to college, like in the high school setting, everything was kind of like laid out, and you were on, like with the grade system, at the end of 10th grade, you go to 11th grade. At the end of 11th grade, you go to 12th grade. I think I just hadn't, I was comfortable knowing that there was like a basic outline for what my life was going to be. And I think when I hit college, that was when I started to become aware of the fact that like after this, there's no blueprint anymore. And I think that was challenging for a while. And I mean, that affected me in a bunch of ways. And I think one of the ways was I think it just undermined a lot of my belief systems for a while. And going through that, I think I've since become much more of a person that wants to, just doesn't want to completely commit myself to any, particular viewpoint. And I think a lot of it is because when I was in high school, I was so committed to certain things that it was costly. So,
what would you say is your most admirable trait, and what is your least admirable trait or characteristic?
Well, I mean, these questions are going well together because I think I'm answering them twice. Yeah. I think it's that same kind of thing. I think that it's the most admirable trait is, basically that I think I'm just good at taking perspectives, and I'm good at learning, and I'm good at developing. I think I'm always engaged in some sort of process of like personal development to a pretty large degree. And I guess it's not something that I specifically focus on, but it's something I think I just do naturally. I'm always looking for things that I don't do very well, and then trying to figure out how I can, I'll never get the whole way there, but.
Yeah. And I think that kind of implies like a logical thing. Like I learn a lot, I learn things, but I think it's important also to note that you're incredible as an empathizer as well. You're very, you've been an incredible friend to me in just the way that you empathize with me and just other people. And I know I've heard from multiple different sources, like Kyle's just a good guy. And take that, it's good and bad to be like a good guy. But is it do you think that was another point for you, a turning point where just empathy became kind of the way, the modus operandum for, is it modus operandum or modus operandi?
I think one's plural. I think it's operandi. I don't know.
Whichever it was. But the way that you kind of interact with people, you've been an incredible friend to me for a very long time, and to other people as well. So and we'll get back to your least admirable trait as well. But
there's no.
You're the first person who's like, wow, my least admirable. No, I don't. Yeah.
It is actually kind of funny. It is a tangent, but just when I listen to the other interviews, it's been a regular thing where people are like, I can think of the least admirable thing right away, and I think actually it's not that I can't think of things that are weaknesses, but I don't think I tend to think of them as like least admirable.
The least admirable, yeah.
But sorry, what were you going to say?
The empathy thing. So back to the empathy part. So what was, is that kind of the same sort of time that, in college where things switched, or do you think that you've kind of always been an empathetic person?
I think it's related to the stuff that happened in college. I think it's all part of the. I think that I think that like way deep down inside, I'm a person who really likes systems, and I like I like having like a concrete understanding of how things are going to be or how things work. And I think in high school that committed me to a certain set of beliefs that were just kind of like out of sync with. I'm talking really abstractly here, but like for instance, I was just really slow to let's see, like talk to girls. I had a really hard time talking to girls, or at least admitting, maybe not talking to girls, but like admitting to romantic feelings, I guess, or like drugs. Drugs were like, I just assumed that I just they were bad. And I think like I think once I realized that I don't know, I was too committed to those beliefs, and and I went through this period in college. It just made me made me very committed to trying to like understand what other perspectives are. And I think for me it's also just I don't know, it's comforting to feel like you can to understand like the ways in which people can like, feel and think, and I don't know, I'm not expressing it very well, but
what would you say is your least admirable trait or characteristic?
Yeah, so I think like I was saying before, I don't know if I think of it as least admirable, but I have weaknesses of character, and I think a lot of them are just related to, so I think I am good at taking people's like taking perspectives, but I'm not really good at I'm not good at like emotionality. I'm not necessarily good at being emotionally present in a way that I think is would often be comforting to people. And I mean I don't know if I necessarily think of that as being a bad quality, but there are many times when I understand where somebody's coming from, and I also understand kind of what they're looking for, what they want out of me, and since a lot of it is, I just am not. I often sense that that somebody wants a certain kind of like emotional reaction, and I'm not often very good at delivering that kind. I think for me, it's not that I don't have like a lot of emotions, but I think it's a slower process, and I think that I feel like people can, in certain contexts, I can make people feel like invalidated, and it's not because I don't care about them a lot, but I can't give them the things that they need right then at the moment. And I mean, it's something that I always work on, but I think to some extent I don't quite know how to transform my personality, and probably a lot of it has to do with like vulnerability, and I have difficulty, you know, I don't get angry very easily, I don't get sad very easily, crying is a pretty rare occasion, and there are a lot of good things about, you know, being, I mean, like, far be it for me to say like getting angry is a good thing, but there are good qualities to you know, I know like there have been a few cases where if, you know, when something bad happens in my life and somebody else just gets really pissed, says like, those fuckers, like, it's really nice to hear that sometimes. Like, it's not that I really believe that they hate the people, it's just kind of, there's a certain satisfaction that can only be given in the form of like a, you know, something emotional, and I think my response is always like, yeah, I understand, and there are times when that's great, and but there are also a lot of times where I think I just feel inadequate and
disconnected from people in that sense. Yeah, interesting. Who would you say, other than your parents, has been the biggest influence in your life?
I thought about this one a few times whenever I listened to the other episodes, and I mean, really, like, if I was being honest, it'd be people that are in my life all the time. Like, you've been a major influence in my life, but I think the way I want to answer it is to throw in somebody that you probably wouldn't expect, which would be my friend Joe Shelton from college. And I guess like it's just hard to know who's the most influential. But the reason I think of him first is because I knew him right at the point when I guess I went through a lot of changes. And he, Joe's a lot of things, but one of the things that he is somebody who was he had a very good bullshit detector. And I think prior to knowing him, I wasn't as sensitive to when I'm not quite sure what to call call it, but I think there's a way that people can speak that's almost like they're like secondhand opinions. So it's sort of like when people express opinions as though they are their own, but they're just kind of regurgitating what somebody else says. And I think there was a time when I was a lot more inclined to do that kind of thing, and Joe would just always see through it in like a second. So it made me like kind of become very aware, like, is this something that I authentically believe? And it made me a lot more sensitive in terms of making sure that when I said something, like I knew the grounding for it. I knew where it was coming from, at least like emotionally. And I mean, that's just something that stuck with me. And I mean, I'm not really very close friends with Joe anymore. And I mean, I fell out with him a little bit too, but but in that sense, he did. I think he was a transformative figure for me at that time.
I know you extremely well. We've been friends since first grade, on and off. We've lived together for the last year and a half. Yeah, year and a half.
Yeah.
So this question might be a bit difficult for me, but is there something about you that not many people know?
Oh, well, I mean, when it's like not that most people don't know, that's easier. I mean, I'm figuring I don't know what the you're gonna know whatever,
I don't know.
but yeah, it's this is one I thought about a little bit, because there's a lot of ways to answer it. I think one thing about my personality, for whatever reason, is I think I live kind of compartmentalized lives, where the people that know me, say through like my video work or something, don't have any clue that I make music. The people that I know through improv or something have no idea that I like philosophy or something like that, where I think that I have a huge amount of interests and passions, and I think that in general there are very few people, except for the people that know me well, that know the scope of the things that I do.
What's been your biggest failure in life?
This one's pretty hard for me, I think. When I think about it, like the word failure tends to, I think, apply to like some major undertaking that didn't work out or something. And I think when it comes to like professional stuff, I haven't had like failures. They haven't been like, I've had things that maybe like I didn't quite work out, but nothing that ever felt like a failure. I think the only things that feel like failures, or like major failures in my life, are relationship based, where because I put a lot of emphasis on my relationships and my close friends, and well, last year in particular, I had a lot of friends that were that I had a lot of emotional investment in, and for many reasons, there was about 4 falling outs that all happened at around the same time, and I don't know if in one sense I don't know if it was a failure, because I don't think that for the most part it was anything to do with me. I don't think I like prompted it in any of the cases, but it's still it feels like a failure to have put so much time and investment into other people and have it not work out, and to not feel at some like gut level that it, like, what did I do, or something like that. And so I don't know if that's a failure, but I think that's the closest thing. Because maybe it just goes to my sense of self-identity. Like I really value the people that are in my life, and I put a lot of myself into befriending people that I really like and value, and I think like to have a lot of spontaneous things just occur is like what happened. Like,
those were rough times.
Yeah.
Going back to something that people don't probably don't know about you is you struggled for a good chunk of time with a very serious
illness. I was thinking about saying that too.
Yeah. What do you think the effects of that experience have been on you?
I mean, that has had a major effect, I think. Yeah, so I got really sick for about a year, and I still have chronic pain. That you know, I've actually been pretty good at this interview. Like, you usually kind of like cocking my neck and yeah, but yeah. But so it was. I think the thing about the illness, there were two main factors. It was debilitating, like to the extent that I felt like I couldn't work. And it was also mysterious, like nobody knew what was causing it. And it was pain-based. It was just a neck and a throat based thing. And I think like when it was happening, it just felt shitty, and it didn't feel like there was anything coming from it. But I think after the fact, I think like the main thing I learned about, I think the main thing that being sick taught me. So there's the part of being sick that manifests itself in the symptoms themselves, like the pain, and the part where you just feel shitty. But I think the other part of illness that's equally as bad, or maybe worse, is that it destroys your motivation, and it makes you feel disconnected from everybody, and just by its very nature, like when you're sick, other people have a harder time empathizing with you, because they can't. You can never experience somebody else's pain, and even when you try. Even if you had a similar experience, there's just something about, like, if you're fine and somebody else isn't, it's just really hard to understand the degree to which, pain can affect other people. And so I think the thing that I learned about, the thing that I learned from being sick is that even though it's a super shitty situation, you end up doing yourself a lot of damage. By I don't know, pitying yourself or defining yourself by how sick you are, and you end up hurting yourself because you end up creating more distance between yourself and other people, which is oftentimes the thing that maybe you need more than even like to get better. You just need to have like human connections. So I think so fortunately I ended up getting a lot better after about a year, but I think that aspect of just recognizing that no matter what your circumstances are, you always have to put effort into all situations. You have to be, if you want to have good relationships with people, it's always going to be largely incumbent upon you to be creating conditions that build bridges. And it's not fair. Like, I mean, if you're sick, I do think there's a point when you get sick enough that maybe you just don't have the energy to even be able to do it. But I think basically, yeah, I just learned that to some extent you are going to be responsible for even if things are bad, you have to be responsible for your interactions with the rest of the world.
Nice, thank you. That was a good answer. Ready for your last question?
Yes.
Who's somebody who's a part of your life, who you admire? What do you admire about them, and what's one or two questions you would ask them?
All right. So I'm going to say Chris Cunningham.
Nice. Okay.
So Chris Cunningham is a singer-songwriter in town, and I mean, I admire a lot of people, but I think the reason I'm thinking of him in particular is that, well, first of all, he's just a really good songwriter, and not just a good songwriter, like he makes music with great melodies, but he also makes music that is he makes the kind of music that I really appreciate. So his music is very unpretentious, but still like gets at very, I mean, things that you can easily emotionally connect with. They're very relatable songs. So I really like his music. I really like him as a person. He's just a very cool guy. And I guess the other key aspect about him is that he seems to be living a life right now that I think is something vaguely close to what I think what I want. In terms of he's making a living doing music. He's got his own recording studio. I don't know if he does a lot of his own. I don't know how much of his own stuff he composes these days, but he's managed to make a living out of just doing music. He's, self-employed. He's created his own life. He's got a family. He's just got like a nice situation. He seems to have done it all while being by remaining a very humble, pleasant, good person. And so I think I want, for myself in 10, 15 years, I want some variation of that. I want to just have like a studio and a nice family and just an excuse to always be able to be making music. So yeah, I admire him for that. And I guess like if I were to ask him any question, I want to know what he thinks of his current situation, like how he feels about it, because I don't think he and I have like exactly the same personalities. I don't know if he's like I'm a little bit more of a gearhead, I think, than he is. I think I like learning about codecs and I don't know, compression and software, blah blah blah. But yeah, I'm curious to just know his feelings about like where he's at, and like if it was anything that he actually envisioned for himself, and if it was, and if he's satisfied with where he's ended up.
Well, Kyle, I want to thank you for so many different things. I want to thank you for being my friend for so long, for always supporting me and being an incredible example for me, for everything that you do and that I admire in you. You've been instrumental on this journey in particular, helping me with every aspect of this, always supporting, watching, listening. You've just been what a best friend should be, so thank you. Cheers, man.
Cheers.
Well, there you have it. Thanks for checking out episode number 10 with my lifelong friend, the very admirable Kyle Sorenson. Thanks again to Kyle for the interview and for the music. All of the music I've used thus far in this project has been made by Kyle. Be sure to check out the rest of his music at patreon.com. There's really some great stuff there. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to like, share, subscribe, and comment. And remember, you are admirable. We'll see you next time.
I think what I need to do is like go back through all those answers and like write an essay or something that gets at it better. Where I don't have to say it, like express it on the spot.
And I think it has a lot to do with. Is there any question that you feel I should have asked you that I didn't?
No, I feel like I kind of want to do a second take on something, but yeah.